This is Common Criminal Podcast. I am your host, Vince Polson, and today we will be introducing our latest guest, my very longtime friend, Courtney Cawthron. Courtney,
What
say hi to the folks.
what up, y'all? It's nice to be here, Vince. I'm really excited to be a part of your little podcast growth.
Well, I will say that at this stage of the show, pretty much nobody listens to it. So if I keep up at this pace, I can probably get every single listener on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
But I am really happy to have you on here since we've
yeah,
known each other since we were since we were kids basically.
yeah. I think I was like 13 or 14 when I met you, man.
Yeah, something in that ballpark, something.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
remember you because at one point you were dating my friend's sister at some point. So I think that's when we got a little more connected after that.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that.
I'm just here to remind you of everything you've done ever in the past, Vince.
Well, that's our show today, everybody. So, Courtney, I was pretty excited for you to get to talk a little bit about your journey as far as from going from school to then, changing directions and running your own business. I definitely wanted people to have an opportunity to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And it's actually really thanks to you that I made that decision. I was going to VCU, and that's actually where you and I and the whole Goontang crew really were connected. And one night, I've just been really distressed. I'd been to VCU for about a year and a half. I was going for physical health and education and exercise science, and it just college was not for me at that time. And I had talked to you for about 15 minutes one evening, and I had finally decided after sitting on it for so long to leave college and pursue trade school with massage therapy. And so I did that. Did just that. It took about 9 months or so, closer to 10 months. And the funny thing that you don't know is like whenever there's any kind of licensing involved with anything, you typically have to take tests of some kind and also get like licensure specific to massage therapy. I had to take something called the MBLEX. So it's just a really long test and you have to pass with a certain grade. And then also you have to pay for your licensing fee. So I went through all of that, and then I worked for a few spas around Richmond, kind of getting started. I didn't go the usual route of where most people start with a massage envy. I actually ended up working for another company that I'm not going to name. um, and though my time with he was actually my teacher. It was very brief, but I just wasn't ready to kind of dive into massage as a career. I wasn't really like grown fully. I was also still kind of like going through some shit emotionally. So I ended up serving again for a while. And I think that's where we were like connected again at Max's.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, because like I left and then I came back for a period of time. And then I was like, well, fuck this. I hate this still.
Yeah.
So I just decided to make the full move out of serving because I just realized like after about a year and a half of going back, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I love serving and I sometimes daydream about it. I'm like, oh man, those were good times. But then I think about serving as an actuality and not just the people that I like loved as friends and hung out with. And I'm like, oh wait, it wasn't that fucking glamorous.
Yeah, I think I suffer
So
from the same thing sometimes where I think back and I look at my time in restaurants through rose-colored glasses because on paper it
yeah,
seems like it should be awesome, you're friendly with customers, you mix the drinks, you bring the food, and it seems like it pretty much should be like hanging out but with like some extra steps. But then in reality of actually doing it, and I mean, I really hate to say this because I have had some really great managers and like restaurant owners that I really respected. But at the end of the day, you are still renting your time for someone else's dream, and that means they're the boss, and you're just the guy who carries the food. So when
yeah,
when
man.
you're in there, it
I mean,
definitely makes it hard.
Yeah, well, I also, love how there was always a bread gauntlet. I mean, when we were fucking cutting bread, because we worked at Carrabba's together too for a
Oh,
long
yeah.
time, and Max's, and the one thing, bread, man, people love their fucking bread. Just remember, like, getting so angry at people because they weren't cutting their bread fast enough and shit like that,
Yeah.
which is really funny in retrospect. It's like, God, man.
Yeah, I wish those
So
people
yeah,
were less
those were some
careful
good
with their
times.
knives. You know, and what's really disgusting, even regret I'm gonna regret having this online, but, like, the number of times I cut my finger, like, trying to cut bread, and, like, so you throw out, like, a few pieces, you get a Band-Aid, you kinda rinse off the knife, and then you just go right back at it. It's like, honestly, like,
It's like, let me put my human flesh in this bread.
I hate to admit it because it's so gross when you say it out loud and you think about it. You know, I don't even go out to eat very often
Yeah.
anymore. Like, every time I go out to eat at a restaurant, all I can think is like, "Oh, geez. I hope I should probably just shut up because if I ever have to go back to serving, I guarantee somebody's gonna show this to me, and I'm gonna realize that not only have."
You're not gonna go back to serving. You can be like, "That wasn't me,
Yeah,
dog. That
you're
wasn't
right.
me."
Fuck, I'll be done with school. I'll be
But,
done with school soon, and I don't ever have to go back to serving. You're right.
you'll be
Yeah,
alright,
I should be
you'll be
fine.
alright. Talk all
Yeah,
that
well,
shit.
if they ever
Yeah.
find out, it just means they're
Um,
listening, right? Hey,
yeah, hey, and there you go. If they're listening, they're a
right,
fan.
and by
Boom.
that point,
Um,
hopefully, it means I can do this as a full-time job. Wouldn't that the American dream?
I the
Yeah,
American dream, dog. Yeah, and you can just contact me to figure out all
there
your
we go, there
write-offs.
we go.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I've been self-employed with the massage therapy gig for about, well, going on 3 years now. Um, it's been one hell of a learning curve, man. I mean, there's not 1 second that so a lot of times, like, I've noticed people will ask me, right? Like, people have started asking me, like, "Hey, I was just curious, like, how did you get into this? Where did you start? Blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, well, what part of where to start do you want to be most ready for? And I think the thing you want to be most ready for anything you want to be self employed on, is having the skill for what you want to go into. Like, that should be primary, and then how you want to get your cash flow. Like, once those two things are taken care of, I feel like everything else that comes to you is going to be some kind of learning curve or learning experience. Because I didn't go into owning my own business knowing exactly how taxes work, or exactly how write-offs work, or all of the overhead involved, or all of the fees and everything else that's really intertwined in that. I'm really grateful for my time as a server, just because it gave me some very strong, like, interpersonal skills and knowledge of how to build rapport. But also, when you're going from something as very social to where you're serving and dealing with like 6 to 7 people at a time and kind of spontaneously, versus essentially, like, you know, not treating is the wrong word, but someone's coming in with a problem and you're helping them address that, and you're with that person and you're essentially doing, like, what I call affordable physical therapy for people. It's so much different in how you have to handle yourself and carry yourself in that. And a lot of that was just something I had to learn and go through. And I also had experiences in, of all places, like the healing arts industry, where um, it was just like places were kind of weirdly passive aggressive or like niche, and I get it to some degree, but also, if you weren't in, you weren't in. And I feel like that can go for any job, right? Where you're employed with somebody and you have to have these certain skills to talk to your coworkers, and if your coworkers don't like you, you probably won't last, right? Like, I feel like that's a reality
That's
for any job
Yeah,
situation
that
versus
that's
being. Go
100%
ahead.
true, and you are right about the serving thing, something I take for granted a lot. 'Cause I mean, obviously I was pretty young, like, when we first met, but, like, I was not a outgoing, charismatic person who liked to talk a lot. That was something that it took me a long time to learn, and, something that I learned best starting in restaurants at a young age, and I take that for granted a lot, like phone skills and people skills by the time I was 16, I was forced to deal with all sorts of people that I didn't know, and, coming from such a small town like we did, there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to
Hey.
meet people I didn't already know. Uh, and then that was really galvanized in the
Mm-hmm.
car business. And I mean, you know what they say, you can teach somebody hard skills, you can't teach them soft skills. And when it comes to trying to own your own
Yep.
business or manage people or even just work in somebody else's business, It's definitely a huge advantage to have those soft skills and to know how to deal with people, especially when you're faced with confrontation.
Yeah, and what's funny is, owning my own business, I first started off, working a job and doing my grind, right? Like it was like a side hustle. And this is gonna be kind of funny, but I used
I
Groupon when I
remember.
first was getting started. I didn't know anything about it. To me, it was just kind of like the plug for marketing, right? Like they do all the marketing for you, they take a cut, whatever. They get you out there, and they're a huge marketing platform, Vince. Absolutely huge. And I was willing to take the pay cut, right? Because I also didn't understand the value of my skill and the value of all of the money and continuing education I would have to earn to keep my license. Um, just so you know, massage therapists are required to keep um, 12 hours, or I think it's 24 hours every 2 years to renew your license. And three of those have to be in ethics. So, and you have to have the paperwork for that if you ever get audited. Um, so anyway, I was working my ass off. I mean, dude, there was a point where I was doing like 8 to 9 hours of massage, which is just like kneading bread dough for 8 hours, 9 hours for like less than $20 an hour. And then that didn't include some of the other fees, right? Like overhead and everything else. And some of the people that you have to deal with who are coming for more affordable services, man, oh man, all I can say is my experience with those people is the reason why my intake form is like 2 pages long. So it was definitely a learning experience, and being able to handle angry people, being able to say no to not servicing people. So that's the one thing I will say that I love is having that power to dictate what I do and don't want to
Yeah,
deal with
and
fully. Um, it's made all of the stress of owning your own business
that's
so
that's
fucking worth it. And even
I was
when,
just thinking
yeah, go ahead.
that's definitely, that's the appeal, right? When you own your own business, you get to decide what customers you do and don't take, and what job is yours, and what job, if you're making enough money, what you can hire other people to do for you. Uh, yeah. Though
Yeah, exactly.
one thing I've actually I thought about you being, especially in massage, and, and I remember once, I had told my girlfriend, I was like, I had told her like, "Oh, I'd love to, like, pay for you to get a massage." And, but then it did occur to me as soon as I said it, I was like, "Well, I mean, it would definitely have to be a woman who gave you a massage, right?" My initial reaction was jealousy, I mean, over something menial and something dumb, especially because, I know you and I know how professional you are, and I assume most, male masseuse would do the same thing, but I was just curious if that's something that you ever deal with or ever comes up, in respect to your job.
So in my job, I definitely so there was a period of time where I worked for Massage Envy, and that was where I dealt with that. Because I'm one on one, I don't see more than one on one person a day in my business. So it was always kind of funny, man, because people would come in for couples massages, and I remember one time that and there's also this is kind of gonna dive into a little bit of homophobia. Uh, but this guy and this girl had a massage scheduled, and they wanted two women for their session, because a lot of times men don't like being touched by other men. There's like this weird like, oh, I might be gay if I enjoy a man touching me kind of thing. Um, and then most of the time, like woman would just request a woman, or maybe they would want a man, but the husband wasn't okay with it. So there's always these interesting relationship dynamics you would see. But one time, I was working with a woman and their husband. I was working on the husband, and another girl was working on the woman. And the whole time, Vince, the whole time, I was being side eyed by this girl like I was about to just mount her husband. And I was just like, dude, like
Even
people would
with
come
her
in
in the
to
room, she
relax
wasn't
and,
comfortable with.
then just be
Huh.
creeping, even with her in the room. Yeah. So and just like it's one thing when someone's just like obviously enjoying their session, right? Because like, you're with there, it's not like you're really talking. I mean, some couples would be talkative and that would always be kind of fun. it does take care of the work because you're not so focused. It's kind of like doing art, right? Like, how focused are you on your art if you're talking versus how focused are you on your art when you're just engaged with what you're doing and not having to think. So, but like when someone's just looking at you with their eyes wide open, it's just so weird. So I haven't dealt with that since I left that setting, but because I don't do couples massages. So and since then, really, no one's ever like acted some type of way with that. But just seeing the relationship dynamics of people coming in and feeling insecure about certain genders working on their significant other or what have you. I mean, as someone who's in the field, I understand like both sides of that, but also I understand that what I'm doing is work. It's not like me trying to do something else besides that. And it's unfortunate because the pornography industry really has adulterated a lot, especially massage, and that's why massage is seen as kind of weird because you go into this room with this one person in this room that's playing like that's kind of like dim and
It's
playing
like the
spa
bass
music and
from
you
a
think
bad
like, oh,
porno.
what's gonna happen there? Yeah, it's some
That's
shit, dude.
hilarious.
It's like it's
I
so
never
fucked
thought
up, but
about
like
porn
that's
fucking
real
up the
life.
way that people perceive massage. That's totally true though. And I mean that's gotta be true.
Absolutely.
That's gotta be true about like a
Absolutely. Go to
million
Pornhub.
things. Like imagine like the number of like teenagers who like should just be going to class and focusing on class, but instead they have like this weird porno playing in their head the whole time they're trying to like learn fractions. Jesus.
Right? Of their fucking teacher.
Yep. You heard it
She
here
can
first,
fraction me
folks,
any
on the
day.
Common
Like,
Criminal
dumb,
Podcast. We are
dumb,
calling
dude.
out the porno industry for pervading so many portions of things we once held sacred and dear. Uh,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
that's a whole another
jealousy is
conversation. I feel like
such a
maybe
weird.
I
I
can
mean,
come back.
I mean, it makes sense because I think anybody who says that they never get jealous about anything has to be a liar. Like, or they've just never really cared about anything. Like, and I mean, it's kind
Absolutely.
of sad in a way. Like, I never want to make my girlfriend jealous
Yeah.
ever. And I mean, she doesn't do things intentionally to make me jealous because she's not
Yeah, of
petty.
course.
But it does come up sometimes, and she'll tell me very calmly and clearly, it's like, "Hey, I know you didn't do it intentionally, but, this thing, this way, whatever, I just got a little jealous." And, to me, I mean, personally, I take it as a huge compliment, It's like, "Wow, like, what do you think about me then?" But, like, it's like, "Oh, you're all dressed up, what, are you trying to impress someone?" It's like, "Well,
Yeah.
but I'm glad you think that there's a line around the block, like, stock in me must be pretty high right now. Uh, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's a weird and it's a funny emotion because, like, it's one of the few emotions, like, we're all really in touch with our feelings now, and, we're all being coached, be it away from toxic masculinity or just being more in touch or whatever, that, all these emotions are good. Sadness is okay. Anger is okay. You just have to learn to vocalize it and share it with people so it doesn't become unhealthy. And yet jealousy is the singular emotion that we're all still told to repress. Jealousy is always still bad, especially when it starts conflicting with who can and can't do what. And to me, I think it's a little hypocritical in the day and age that we're all supposed to be more in touch with our emotions. That there's one that's just supposed to be bad all the time. And I think there's a healthy level of jealousy. It does show that you care.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, what do you think about it? I know, like I said, with your work
Mhm.
and just generally speaking, I think you're a little bit more wise about these sorts of things. So I would be curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I've honestly been so I like I said, we were talking about how we both, you listen to podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts too, and also like YouTube channels. Because when you have a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time, you just listen to other people's perspectives and like stories and their versions of things, and that helps open your mind. So I recently was listening to this couple. They are polyamorous. I practice monogamy, but they address like just what you were saying, right? Like constructively saying like, hey, this made me feel this way today. Can we talk about it without like arguing, right? So they do a lot of that. And one thing they were really talking about, especially as like a polyamorous couple, was jealousy. And so what I really resonated with in that is that when you experience jealousy, right, you think like, oh, like, excuse me, what do let's start with like a career perspective, right? Like let's say someone is like way more farther along in their career, maybe they've been doing something for 15 years and they just have skill from that experience, right? And then people
Mhm.
who want things now, right? Like say you've got 5 years in an industry but you're not where you want to be, but you're doing better than you were when you first started, but you're just looking at this person, you're like, oh, what do they have that I don't have? Like, what's so good about them? This resentment and this jealousy can come out of that, right? Or like if your partner is going to hang out with other people, maybe it's like, again, like the whole gender thing with the massage thing that we talked about. Maybe your friend, I'm friends with a lot of dudes, like that's just my life. I love video games and bad jokes and just um, so like going and hanging out with those people, it's like, oh, what are they, why are they hanging out with them instead of me? Like whatever, whatever. And I think that kind of behavior comes from a sense of lack. And that's what this couple was talking about. It's like in that moment, we think we're lacking, right? And we really start focusing on the lacking aspect of ourselves, right? Because we're like, what do I not have? Why am I not as good as that person? Um, why do they not want to spend time with me and want to spend time with them? So there's a moment where we're kind of lapsing in our self love for ourselves, right? In our self care. And
Mm.
so, yeah, right. And then, like when they said that, I was like, holy shit. And I'll send you the plug on their channel if you're interested. They talk a lot about emotional work and things like that. It doesn't have to be related to polyamory directly. Um, and I was like, wow, that's like really moving, because rather than focusing like on lack, right? Like, what do I not have? It's like, what can I give myself in this moment to help alleviate this feeling? Or why is this coming up for me? Like, is this a trigger from the past? Is this a trigger from something I haven't done for myself? And what can I do to help build my self confidence in this moment? And another thing that they kind of juxtaposed into this was how, if someone is very joyful hanging out with somebody else, and it doesn't have to be sexual. We really sexualize like male female relationships, or a lot of that. And um when they go and
Well,
hang out with that person, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say that's because of porn. I'm gonna blame porn again, but
Yeah, and I mean that could be like real life, because I mean, honestly, dude, I just like, I, people don't always know who the other person is, and there can be an insecurity around that, and that's fine too. It's just kind of people having to work through their own demons. But coming back to that, it's like if that other person gets joy from hanging out with that other person, right? And it's like not harmful to them and it's not harmful to you, then like why would you want to restrict that person's life? Like, to me, jealousy is healthy, right? Because I think more than taking it as a compliment, right? Like we can use it as a moment to reflect into ourselves and see like, okay, why am I experiencing this, and what kind of self-love do I need to give myself to recognize that I am a very unique person and that I am worthy of the love of my partner, or the love of my friend, or the love of my colleagues, or whatever, even though they have relationships elsewhere that give them joy or something, right? Like it was really interesting to hear
I
that. So
I think that that's a really positive way to look at jealousy. I guess I never really thought about it that way. Like almost as that, I mean, either a reminder to change your thought pattern and to maybe give yourself a little more credit, or failing that, maybe just like a powerful self reminder to like fucking get your
go
shit together, get
outside.
in shape and work harder.
Yeah,
Yeah, get like physically get in shape or get your mind in shape, and it maybe work on improving those
yeah.
areas that that you feel you're lacking in, which might be the root of the jealousy. I think you bring up a pretty excellent point. And how ironic that, that this topic of jealousy started at a place called Massage Envy. It was something that dawned on me halfway through this. I was like, "Oh, massage envy, jealousy. They're not exactly the same thing,
I
but,
mean, but dude, you wouldn't
I
believe
will
it, you
do."
know? I mean, it's just like, people would request very specific things. And I mean, sometimes it was a matter of comfort, which I can understand, like not all women are comfortable having a man work on them, whatever. But also just like dealing with that in that setting was always just really uh like to me it was comedic because like I'm sorry girl, I'm not interested in your man's dick. I'm interested in the money I'm gonna get for doing the work that I love doing. Like, sorry to disappoint you,
Well,
but again, blaming porn.
yeah. No, I mean, it's true. It's funny how like, almost sets the tone for, like, the way in a weird way, it does all the evil things that, like, our parents said it would do if you watch too much of it, right? Like, in a way, it's a self-fulfilling
Yeah.
prophecy I mean, I think it really does. It diminishes I think it diminishes the value of, like, a relation especially, like, sexual
Oh yeah.
relationships, because that's something that's really I think maybe it's just that I've just ingratiated myself with, like, some really low moral people, but,
Shots fired. Shots
but I
fired.
mean, like well, I mean, I'm just that's definitely not a statement about the people that I have on this
Yeah,
show, but
yeah.
I'm just saying at a certain period of time, you could have a relationship with somebody that was not sexual. Like, I mean, it was sexual to the extent of, like, a goodnight kiss, maybe some hand holding, but, like, but it was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm dating this person," and it's like, now it's like, "Oh, I'm dating this person." It's like, "Oh, so y'all
Yeah.
fucking." And it's like, right, yeah. "Oh, yeah, how's that like?" It's like, "No, dude, we've been hanging out, we went to dinner a couple times, we saw a
Yeah, because
movie,
that was like high
like,
school,
it's
right?
nice,
Like
we're just." Yeah, we right, it's like going out like, "Oh, hey, mom, can you drive me and Samantha to the movie theater?" Like, you know? Like, and that was the thing that we did in, like, middle school or, like, even, like, the early years of high school, but then, because of this, pornographic, very sexual world that we live in, now it's like, oh, as soon as you start to hit a critical mass in your feelings for somebody, it's pretty much just expected that, like, that's almost a social expectation that falls on
yeah,
people.
I would
Like, can you imagine entering the dating world now if you found a guy well, I mean, I know obviously you are very happy in your current relationship, but I'm just saying imagine for a moment that you're single again and you're dating, you find somebody, you've got these really powerful feelings for, you really, really genuinely like this person. And after a few dates, some hand holding, and you think that you're ready for that moment. You say, "Hey, like I'd like for you to stay the night and sleep over at my place." And they looked you dead in the eye and they said, "Oh, no, God would be really
oh
upset."
man.
And
Yeah,
like
and that would
and
probably kill it,
there was
right?
no sex. Right, exactly, there was no sex, and they were fine they might be even fine with, like, some messing around or whatever, but no
Mhm.
nakedness, no nakedness at all. Y'all are just in a you can kiss, you can even long kiss on occasion as long as it's not too often. I mean, can you imagine how confusing that would be to navigate? Like, I hate to say, like, normal person, but I mean, by our society standard, I'd say, like, non-religious people, I feel like, generally speaking, are, like, not so restricted sexually in a
Oh,
lot of ways,
absolutely.
and I feel like right, that would just be a very confusing and difficult thing to navigate with somebody who wasn't on the same page as you, and it's kinda sad in a lot of ways.
I mean, it is, but also, I think if you wanna go there, that, a lot of times, like, again, going back to, like, listening to podcasts, one thing I was listening to is that we kind of, like, teach abstinence-only education, right? Like, there's this weird, like, suppression of sex that happens, and, like, especially in a situation like that, like obviously the people would have to be on kind of like the same moral compass, right? Like, oh, well, I'm an atheist, so see you later. I'm gonna go get my dick wet, right?
Uh,
That's probably what.
well, I didn't mean to make it sound like religious people are the only ones that consider sex sacred, but
Oh
I mean,
no, there's plenty
but
of people.
it's definitely, now that I think about it, it's definitely how that came off.
Yeah, but no, it's fine. I understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to like put it like that. I mean, anybody could be like that. There's asexual people, right, who aren't physically attractive people or don't want touch. Like that's real life. And for someone else
You
to have the
know, if for
capacity to deal
real,
with that, yeah.
I think I do have one friend that's asexual, and, like, I'm not certain that he is, but, like, I just think about it, sometimes it crosses my mind, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, "Yo, like, I can, like, tell you what to say or, like, how to dress. I can significantly improve your odds." But then I just think, like, what if he's just not interested? Like, he's just that's just not his thing. He doesn't give a fuck. He's more focused on, like, work or school or, like, projects. Maybe this dude's just incredibly driven and doesn't have a sexual bone in his body, and then I'm just gonna come off like an insensitive dick. But hey, I mean, that was just a weird side note. I might edit that out later.
That's totally fine. I mean, do what you will, sir. Um, so I guess like with if we're I mean, I'm gonna tell this story because to me it's just hilarious. I mean, you remember I'm the person that introduced you to fucking hentai years and
Oh,
years and years
Jesus.
ago. Yeah, if we're really gonna go, so it's actually my fault that you're corrupted. Really, it's just. But to me at that time, that shit was just funny. Like it wasn't for me. I wasn't like,
That shit was hilarious,
yeah, I
and
wasn't like,
I
oh yeah,
as
that's
soon as
so
you
good. It's like
as
no,
soon as
this
you
turned
say
out
that,
to
I
be
remember it specifically, and what a weird way, what a strange way to be introduced to that. It was a room full of people.
yeah, no,
I think
there
it
were
was
several. There were like 5 people. I
yeah, there were 5 or 6 of
was
us.
like, hey
There
guys,
were
look at
5
this
or
shit
6
that
of us
I
in there.
found on the internet.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you
Jesus.
know,
What a
I,
I
uh,
and from that moment, I knew we would be best friends.
yeah, it was that moment. Really, it was. But you know, it's just I guess like coming full circle with the whole like jealousy, pornography thing. I mean, that's a whole soapbox in itself, dude. I mean, there's the side that you can bring up like human sexuality is oppressed, not just like by religion, but in a society as a whole, right? And I mean, if you look at like Tibetans, for example, you see two things really exemplified. As in the words of my good friend, death and sex, right? So those are the things that we do, right? We die and we have sex and we procreate or whatever. Um, and
Mm,
then but because of the proliferation of porn and the lack of teaching, because like I said, teaching abstinence only education doesn't necessarily, like in my knowledge, is really about religion. I think there's a lot of shame around sex. Like we're very like hush hush about it. Like we give different names to like vaginas and dicks, like oh my duder and like oh my dingle. Like it's like what are you saying, dude? And then you know, going forward from there, like kids are just kind of left to their own devices to like explore and learn and find out about sex and relationships. And where is that? All over. Where is that? Right? The internet, pornography. Like, and pornography has existed as long as man has, in weird sculptures and weird pottery and things like that. You know?
you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, you know, it's
Well
a weird point,
well
but it has gotten to a point where objectification and deviant ideas are like really placed. Like, oh, this woman at this bus stop really wants me because of her outfit or something like that. You know. So
Well,
I understand.
my thoughts, the thing that I find kind of confusing or troubling, because I definitely see what you mean as far as like our especially like the public school system, sex education, and like society and culture in general
Mm,
sort of makes sex this thing that we're not really supposed to talk about, and you're really only supposed to ever do with like one person. Like it used to be like one person your whole life. Now it's like, well, just like one person at a time, like just you
yeah.
guys, you talk about it, and like this is the thing, you touch naked bodies together and you don't touch naked bodies with anybody else. But
Yeah.
like, and I'll agree that there's definitely some social conditioning around sex that make it this sort of taboo thing. But on the other hand, and I mean, I don't know anything about your relationship, but I definitely know about my relationship, and I know there's no way I'm touching naked bodies with anyone other than Liz, or she's gonna cut my dick off, and probably vice versa. uh, And and I mean, I don't think I want to live in a world where it's just like, oh yeah, you've got your forever partner that you buy a house with, like, you guys share a house and you guys have a little family together, and you do your taxes, you file those together. But the naked bodies thing, we just do that with whoever. I don't think I want to live in that. I don't want to live in the world where where everybody's polyamorous, and sex is like a handshake, or going to the gym. Like, hey dude, you want a spot for me? Oh yeah. like I don't know if that's
Oh
a world
shit,
I
dude.
want to live in. So I mean, I agree with you on like the social aspect of like this conditioning we've done around sex, but my fear is, like, I don't wanna overcorrect it. I don't wanna go too far the other way. Frankly, I'd rather shoot just shy. I mean, because that's pretty much what's always happened anyway. People just pretended like they didn't do it. Like, for instance, like, before divorce laws and before birth control were, like, readily accessible things,
Mm,
you know that, like, as soon as, like, birth control and abortions were legalized, the number of premature babies born at 7 months, like, dropped, like, to a third of what it used to be. Like, when the shotgun wedding, like, times from, like, the 1800s and most of the 1900s, the number of babies born at a healthy weight at 7 months was, like, insanely high.
damn.
Because what used to happen was, if your girlfriend found out she was pregnant out of wedlock, you had a shotgun wedding, everybody pretended like she wasn't pregnant. 7 months later, she looks like she's full term, and then all of a sudden, "Oh, the baby came early. Oh, it's a healthy weight. It grew up just fine." And, like, this used to happen a lot. Like, this used to happen all the time, and it's
That's
to
crazy.
the statistically, it shows that the number of premature babies went down significantly once we moved out of this pro-life era of, like,
Mhm,
our country's history. So, I mean, I think that we're moving in a direction that is good, but also I
mhm.
just think that, I think to an extent, we don't necessarily wanna go too far, because the numbers also show, I mean, like, growing up in a stable household with both of your parents that are married and not quarreling constantly, that is scientifically the healthiest environment you can grow up in. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we don't wanna go too far and just be like, "Oh, yeah, free love, polyamory," because then what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a lot more people that just say like, "Oh, yeah, like, I why am I gonna file my taxes with you and build this house with you and raise this kid with you, when really the social fibers that make this thing something special between us, are devalued or otherwise don't exist anymore." So, I just think, it's a complex time that we live in. That's all I'm trying to say. I took a long time to say it.
Yeah, no, dude, I mean, take as much time as you need, and, like, I love hearing your perspective on things, and, like, so I'm gonna be frank, I have been celibate the entire time. For those who know my situation, I'm not really gonna get specific, but my partner and I are currently, like, separated due to circumstances we had no control over really in the long term of things. So, before he went in, we discussed our relationship. We discussed, like, expectations and like what the future would look like. And I decided that I wanted to maintain a monogamous model. I was not going to see anybody else while he's been gone. And I've stuck to that. I'm not, I'm really not interested in being polyamorous either. I always like to hear people speak on different subjects because, like, I think if we start to get dismissive about the source of the material, not, and I'm not saying like I'm gonna go listen to a Westboro Baptist church person talk. Like that's not what I'm in the mood to hear. But I was very not about polyamory, and but this couple really like opens up not just polyamorous lifestyle, but the emotional work that is around maintaining any healthy relationship. So I would totally agree. I'm kind of on the same page. Like I am not a polyamorous person. I don't think that lifestyle would work for me right now. And I don't necessarily, it's kind of like being a goth kid, right? Like you don't want to wear black every day, right? But there's somebody out there who wants to wear black every day, right? And I mean, and it's just like, and you know, they're gonna wear a fucking hoodie when it's 90 degrees out. That's fine. That's the life you want to live. Go for it, dude. You know.
I love
Um,
this metaphor.
yeah. So you know, I mean, that's just the facts. You know, I'm on the same page. I mean, I'm not interested in compromising my relationship in any way, shape, or form. But also, you know, I don't want the monogamy model to poison the possibility of my friendships based on somebody's gender. Because, like,
Oh,
I love video games so much,
and
Vince,
it's a
and
lot
so
more
many guys
dudes.
love playing
It's a
video
lot
games.
more
Like, that's
dudes that
it,
play.
dude.
That's so true. And
Yeah, so like, you know, when I hang out with my dude friends, it's like, hey, you want to drink a beer and play Smash Brothers, or you want to drink and like just fucking like play this old school Atari Sega game? It's like, hell yeah, that's all I want to do with my life right
well,
now.
like, I
And
mean, Liz, she's in the funeral business, which is a predominantly male industry. So, I
mhm,
mean, one of her best friends is a guy that she works with. He operates the crematory, and I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. Like at first, like when we like first started dating, I was like, "Who is this guy? Like, why does he always have time to hang out?" Like, I was like, "What the fuck is his deal?" But, obviously, getting to know her better and then, and getting to also I mean, I've gotten a chance to know him. He's actually, like, a super fucking cool guy. Like, I
yeah,
really love every time I hang out with this dude, it is a laugh riot. Like, I think the first time we hung out and, like, she had to work one day and she's like, "Listen, like, I appreciate, like, you not being weird about me and Chaz hanging out or anything, but want you to genuinely be comfortable with it." I was like, "Well, like, I mean, I'm cool with it. I don't really give like, he's got a girlfriend who you're also friends with, like, sorry for being weird before." She's like, "Well, no problem, but, like, seriously, like, I'm friends with this I care about this person, I want you to get to know him." Kinda like I mean, same as I told her, like, when she got to meet you, I was like, "This is a longtime friend of mine, I care about this person,
yeah,
which is why I want you to know them." The whole time I was at lunch with this dude, like, the very first time we hung out, first time I spoke to him, and I think
yeah.
I was red in the face, like, crying as we were leaving because I literally sat next to this dude at a bar, and I don't think I stopped laughing for, like, 45 minutes straight, and it
Plot twist: you end up falling in love with
oh,
Chaz.
Jesus. I mean, I'm not gay or
I'm kidding.
anything, he's just super charismatic. No, I'm just but
I'm fucking with you, dude. I'm fucking
yeah,
with
no, I know, I'm just joking around.
you.
But no, I mean, the truth is I get along with everybody. Like, me personally, I get along with everyone, especially working in restaurants. I had a lot of friends who were girls, because, I mean, that's, especially for servers, it's mostly women, and a lot of cooks
Mhm.
don't necessarily have they don't have the soft skills. I feel like I put off a lot of chef people, not all of them, actually. That's really not fair. I just put off a certain number of people, and a certain number of those people also work in
Mhm.
kitchens. Uh, but no, I mean, I had to grow a lot in terms of, like, my maturity level, to really handle, like, an adult relationship. I definitely had to grow out of, like, this, like, weird jealousy thing, and I mean, it's gross, and I mean, you can any rational person can tell the difference between, somebody who's creating problems for your relationship and somebody who exists and you creating the problems in your own head. Like, any rational person can tell the difference. So, not say that everybody needs to be a total doormat and just wait to get cheated on, but just to say that, like, if you're a person who has critical thinking skills, you can tell the difference between somebody who's just a friend and somebody who's, like, a snake in the grass.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I think that comes down to, like, vibes and shit, and I mean, like, coming back to the jealousy thing, I mean, like, I don't think there was a time where I was not jealous as fuck. I mean, come on, I feel like all kids go through
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and it is a constant work thing. I mean, just how you were saying you had to grow out of it, I had to grow out of that too, you know? Like, I don't want to be the person that limits somebody, um, and also, I mean, it's not necessarily like the people you hang out with, but the person you're dating. Like, are they changing? Are they, you know, are they feeling supported while they're with me? Am I giving them the space to be themselves so they want to be around me? You know, because like I feel like we all kind of dislike our parents to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, like our parents are really there for us. And most of the time, like good parents hold a lot of space for their kids. So even after their kids go through some crazy changes or we're even like dicks at some point, they're like, hey, we still love you, by the way, you know? And I think it's when we give our partners that same kind of unconditional loving space. And I mean, not again, not being a fucking doormat. I mean, if a toxic situation is happening to you, then like by all means, please get the fuck out of it.
Right.
But what I am trying to bring around to that point is just like, are you the kind of person who brings the leftovers home? I think I heard that sentence in a like TED talk. So like, who are you at work, right? Are you this like really charismatic person who's ready for whatever, and then you come home and you're like kind of a dick and short tempered, or are you still on in the way that you're on at work and holding space for all of that shit? Are you able to hold space when you go home for other people and specifically your like significant other? Because a lot of crazy shit can happen, man, and you just got to be okay with whatever they're going to tell you, whatever they're going to say, whatever they're going to bring up. I mean, James and I got to a point, because our relationship was communication based only, where we were actually talking about like failed love and like unrequited love. And that takes a lot to hear, right? Because you're listening to like their past and like their exes and stuff, and like hearing that really upfront and diving really deep into that. Um, but it was also a really positive experience. It's like, okay, now I know a bit more about my partner and like their past and what we can try differently or not do, or some healing where healing needs to take place. So there's so many threads to that dynamic.
Man, that's
So
like that's always the weirdest. I don't or I, okay, I'm speaking for myself here, and I'm
yeah,
kind
go
of
for
putting
it.
this out there, for you or any of the listeners also. But like that weird growing pains in the relationship that I personally experience every time of like, you're with this person and then they start telling you about, I mean, a lot of the times it comes up because of baggage. Like, they start telling you
Yeah.
about their ex and, like, maybe it was a fucked up story about something that happened, or maybe they tell you a story that was really great and it was, like, their one that got away, and then, like, the whole time you're sitting there, like, cutting your own teeth because 'cause you're like, it goes right back into the jealousy thing where, like, it's like you wanna hear it. It's like
Yep.
a car accident. You can't stop listening, you can't look away, like, and you're like, "Ah, I don't wanna know this, but I
Yeah.
wanna know more." And then afterwards, if you feel like your whole relationship needs a shower, like you're like, I can't believe I told you all those things. I can't believe you just told me all these things. Like, God, we're both, like, mentally, we're really ugly people. Like, we've got, these thoughts or, like, and it's so strange where, like, during the whole conversation, in my experience, is always, like, kind of weird. But then afterwards, it is invaluable information because it's so important. Because that's really when it comes down to it, learning to, like, speak the love language of your significant other, that's the juice right
Yep.
there. You need that information. And
Well, yeah, and also I think to an extent, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of your current relationship. I mean, like I feel like when we get to a point where we're vocalizing that, while it can be a really fucking hard conversation to listen to, right? Because like I really don't want to hear about this like girl that you almost kissed when you were like in high school, but like you're telling me about it, and that must mean you're really comfortable with me. So it's just kind of like, and then after you hear it, it's like, well, I'm the one that's fucking here, like because of that circumstance or because of that failure, right, in their past or what's perceived as a failure. I am now here.
right,
So like, um, but I also get those feelings of like, like, ah shit, that jealousy and that inadequacy is surfacing. It's like, oh, you had this with somebody else. But again, it's kind of like coming back into that space where that part of their life I didn't exist in. That wasn't about me. That was about their growth and their time period, and what led to this moment, kind of thing. And while that is a really positive, like kind of sugar coated version of the complexity of emotions you might feel hearing that shit, that's kind of the way that I've ended up processing a lot of what I've heard. um and also like telling somebody else like that shit. It's like it's like, oh, suddenly I want to tell you all these things and kind of make you how I feel in this moment right now hearing about all this,
right.
right?
But I mean,
um
I mean, that, like I said, that
yeah.
information, like, especially when it comes to baggage and, like, stuff that somebody's dealing with, like, everybody is just also to make this perfectly clear, everybody is responsible for their own fucking bags. If you've got more bags than you can carry, you need to learn to pack lighter. but at the same time but at the
Hey!
same time, if you give a fuck, man or woman, if you give a fuck about the person that you are with, you're always gonna wanna help them carry the bags. So, you gotta give
Well,
them
yeah.
time, you gotta give them, especially because that's another thing too, like, getting into the relationship I have with Liz, like, there were a couple times where, like, it seemed like we almost reconnected, but it for one reason or another, it was it just wasn't the right time, and that was always the thing. Even when we first met, there were a lot of feelings, and it wasn't the right time, and then later down the road, we're both in other relationships, it's like, "Yeah, it's not the right time," and then, finally, we get to a point where it's like, "Well, the timing's still kind of shit, but it's as good as it's ever gonna get unless we're trying to move forward." And so then
Yeah.
that's where it comes in, helping the person carry the bags. And I mean, fuck, I was I was not doing well, when Liz and I made, like, an honest go at, like, a real relationship. I was
Mhm.
unwell, but I was actively working on it. And so at that point,
Yeah.
she made the decision like, "Hey, if you're honestly working on it, then, then we'll, fuck it. Let's start. It's something that's going to make both of us happier. Let's just go for it." But I mean, that was some mental health problems for myself. But I mean, that's the truth when it comes to baggage in a relationship too. Like, it's important to make sure that your own needs are heard, but it's also important to be patient with the other person. If and again, this is if it's somebody that you really care about. If this is somebody that you're just supposed to be having a good time with, and this isn't the person you envision having, raising children with or something, then fuck it. Don't get in their way. Don't teach them to depend on you for some kind of stability. Like, get out of their way and move on. But if it's somebody that you actually envision having, like, a future and a family with, then, like, help them carry their bags and in a healthy way, not in a codependent way. Like, show them, like, it's okay to get professional help. Like, be there if they need someone to talk to wind down. But, uh but yeah, I mean, man, relationships are tough, and I feel like Liz is gonna hate me for talking about her so much on the show.
I mean, if anything, it's a positive talking point. I mean, I'm just like, you know, to your point of carrying baggage, one of my really good friends, I haven't talked to him for a while, but like he was like, relationships always involve baggage. It's just how much do you want to carry? And so that really coincides with what you said. And, I think the difference is like, even if you're in a shitty place or in a bad place or just the timing's like really sucking for you or just things are not right or not the way you want them to be, it's how you utilize that time and that space for yourself. And again, going back into the self-healing thing, it's all really there because like if you choose to be the same person 10 years down the line, is that going to be, are you and your partner still going to be compatible, and that's the whole point of like growth. I read this post forever ago on Reddit about this guy who, just lost his wife, but they had been together for like 60 years. And he was like, it was like dating 8 different people because like people change, Um, so yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's that.
no, I definitely agree with you there. That's something that came in my mind, pretty recently, like, that I think everybody has heard the thing before, like, after 7 years, on a cellular level, you're a completely different person because the cells die and replace themselves,
Hmm.
and, this is probably one of those bullshit fake science facts that, like, circulates in memes, and people are like, "Oh, no, I learned it somewhere," and they can never cite a source, uh, but because that's totally exists, by the way. If you're not if you are if you ch if I ask somebody to cite a source and they tell me they learned it in a meme, if you're a dude, I'm gonna slap you across your face. And the reason I say that is because I know for a long period of time, I was guilty of that type of shit, and it's so dumb. But,
Oh my god,
right,
dude!
it's
No,
if
it's
somebody just
crazy.
puts,
It's
like, a
just crazy.
nice picture, it's, "Oh, yeah, it's the" what do you call that? Mitosis. You see, like, a cellular mitosis, it's like, every 7 years, your entire all on a cellular level. But no, I mean, but the fact of the matter is, if you look I look at myself from 7 years ago, like, at 18 years old, the type of person I was, and I think about myself today, and, like, I get myself sick sometimes, like, thinking about some of the absolutely reckless shit that I did, like, 7 years ago, and then 7 years before that, 11 years old, that doesn't count, but, like, I'm just saying, like, even just 3 years prior to turning 18, when I was 15 years old. But, like, I think about the shit I would get into 7 years ago, and I'm not talking about illegal shit. I'm talking about, like, when you and Rick and Phil yeah, you were there. We climbed the rock wall, like, the old yeah, you remember
Yeah!
we climbed the rock wall at Belle Isle,
Yeah,
like, the
I was fucking there,
yeah,
dude,
and
yeah. That was like 15 or 20 feet of just, like,
dude,
flat
it was
fucking rock
30 feet. It
face.
was easily 30 feet. If you fall from that height, you absolutely are breaking a bone. If you fall on your head, it's lethal. But, yeah, we
Dude,
free
yeah, and we
climbed
went
it.
into the
We
pump
free
house.
climbed it, and the best part
Yeah.
is at 25 feet up, it's the loose rocks, so you can just climb it
Uh-huh.
it almost like footholds and handholds. As long as you don't get bit by a spider, you won't fall and die. But then when you get to the very top and it's just the concrete from where they restored it and it's all the smooth concrete from the dam, and then Rick and Phil are pulling you up over they had to do it for me because I was scared stiff when I got to the top of those rocks. And then like I looked down, I was like, holy shit, this is pretty high up here. And they pulled me
Yeah.
over. And now I remember the last time I went to the rock quarry, which was over a year ago. But I went down to the rock quarry. I walked to that exact spot. I looked up and I said, there's no fucking way. You couldn't pay me money to climb it again. Now, granted, at that time I was like over 250 pounds. I've lost most of that weight, but no, I was 70 pounds heavier than when we used to free climb that, and I just
Dude, that shit was awesome,
right,
though. That shit was awesome, though. Like, really. I mean, I think at that point, we were so fucking fit.
dude.
I mean, I was
I
doing
had
martial arts at that
abs.
time.
I
So
had abs. Like, you could see them. They were coming in, and I remember having abs, looking at pictures of myself, looking down, looking in the mirror, and thinking like, "God, what a fat fuck. I'm just gonna be a fat fuck my whole life." And then now I look at pictures of myself from that time, and I look at myself, and I look in the mirror, and I say, "God, what a fat fuck. I'm gonna be a fat fuck my whole life." But the truth is, back then I had
Oh my
abs and
god.
I would kill to be back at 180 pounds. Like, when I say like kill, I mean I would sacrifice so many goats to go back. Uh,
I mean, dude, we just gotta serve every day and barely eat
yeah,
and
yeah,
go back to that
gotta go back to
lifestyle. Holy
Carrabba's,
shit.
wait a 6 table
Doing like
section,
12,
and then get nickeled and dimed by
12 miles a
Donnell
day, man.
so much that you come home with
Oh
barely enough
fuck,
money to pay your
dude.
rent, so all you can eat
Dude,
is
you
just
wanna hear
a
some shit?
baked chicken. A and then on days that you're not
From Carrabba's, that's where you got a
right, and then
discount
on
from
days that
it.
you're not working,
Yeah.
you have to be so broke that your idea of a good time is going down to the rock quarry with your best friends and chasing your dog to catch a soccer ball. Like
I mean, that
oh,
shit
yeah,
was really fun, though.
best time.
But you wanna know some shit really fast?
Oh, yeah.
Since you brought up Donnell. So I very briefly, it was after James and I lived together. I very briefly uh, went back to Carrabba's. I
No.
ended up working at the Carrabba's in short. No, I shit you not. I shit you not, because things got really bad, dude. My money got really tight
I
at
had
one
no
point. I
idea.
was really broke. Yeah, I had 3 jobs at one point. I was working at the Daily. I was working at another restaurant in the South End called Patina, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna
Remember you
just
being
try
at
this."
Patina.
And of all fucking people,
Yeah, I
Patina.
remember you being at Patina in the daily.
It, yeah, yeah, but dude, I'm telling you, it was like a month, maybe 2 months, like max. It was right after I totaled my car. That's why. And my dad had loaned me his car.
Right.
So I was like, I need to save for a car, man. I got to get another job. Like, I can't, I don't know where else to serve right now. Like Patina wouldn't promote me, the Daily wouldn't promote me. It was so weird. I was just like stuck in food runner buster position. I was there for like, almost a year at both
Oh,
of
they
those
love to do that.
restaurants.
They
So,
can convince
um,
her to be a
yeah,
food
no,
runner, they'll never let you out.
exactly. So anyway, so I went back to that fucking Carrabba's that fucking Big Brian owned. And I talked to him and I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm just like I just need a job right now." Of all people, who is that little dude who said feck all the time? Do you remember
Joe.
his name? He was like, "It's
Yeah,
feck.
wasn't
It's
his name
feck."
Joe? He did the
I don't
he
think
would
it was.
flip calamaris, I remember that shit.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was Joe, but he was like the really short dude who, like, I swear to God, was
No, it
just like
was
always so
Chris.
hyped up.
It was
I'm sure. I'm
Chris, his
sure he
name
was
was
fucking
Chris.
Chris. Where the fuck is
Yeah, no,
Chris? He
that's
worked there.
crazy.
He fucking worked there,
Dude,
and I ran into him.
that guy
I
was
started working.
wild. I
You
completely
wanted to meet?
forgot about
He
him.
never changed.
I bet
He
he
never
didn't. He was
changed, and you know
fucking
what? He was
50 years
so
old when we met
fine.
him. He wasn't changing. He'd been that guy for like 20 years probably.
Oh my
Jeez.
god. So yeah, he was there, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. So I don't know if you remember all that beef I had with my old roommate Loggle and I, whatever at that time.
Oh, jeez.
Um,
I forgot about
so
him.
we had all collectively, yeah, good. But we had collectively left Carrabba's, I think all together. Like we
Yeah,
all
no,
quit,
me,
and
you, Loggle, and Alexis, I think all quit at once.
yeah. But you want to know some shit? I went in and to meet with Big Ryan and put in an application. And Big Ryan came up to me and he was like, "Hey, so I need to ask you about this. You were put in the system as fired for
Yeah, you told
stealing."
me and Alexis about that. I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fired for
And
stealing. Forgot about that shit.
I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Are you serious?" And I had to sit down with him. I was like, "I literally have a copy of the email that I sent into corporate." I was like, "I can forward that to you." But I gave 2 weeks notice and quit that job. Like, so that
Well,
happened like very briefly. But
Alexis and I
basically, like,
gave 2 weeks notice, and then Donnell released all of our shifts and then told us don't even bother. Like, we put in our 2 weeks, and
yeah.
he just released all of our shifts. He's like, "You know what? I'll take care of them for you. Y'all just enjoy." We're like, "Yo, what the fuck?" Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
because we needed
I
that
still
money,
need
dog.
income the next
Oh
2 weeks
god.
before I start my next job that I told them I couldn't start for 2 weeks. Uh, and yeah,
Yeah.
then, man, we ended up going to social. That place was so fucking that place
Oh,
was
yeah, you guys worked at Silver
that
Living
place was a
too!
like, when they first
Oh
opened, it was
my god.
such a mess, but it was, like, kinda awesome at the same time.
It was, like, really fun. You guys had a
Dude,
blast serving there, and I remember that was where I got drunk for
well,
my 21st birthday. That was so lit, dude.
my little cousin worked there before she moved to Boston, and so, like, this was way more recently. This was, like, up to a year ago, and, dude, like, it was one like, from the way she described it, it was 100% different. Like, everything was really structured. It was like they hit their stride in terms of, managerial organization. So, like the shifts were broken up into actual shifts, not like, "Hey, can you show up sometime between like 3 and 5 and start cocktailing for dinner?"
Oh my gosh,
The
dude.
when I first started
Oh my
working
god.
there, it was like it would be like if I tried to run a business coming out of high school. Like that's what it was like when I first started, and I don't know what happened or what changed. Uh, I'm not really sure.
Mhm,
It might have just it was probably just growing pains of like them having an established business and not needing to have people who would work for them, but like
mhm,
having an adult job that generates a lot of money to offer. So then like they were like, yeah, these are the rules. This is how we play the game. Our house, our rules. Deal with it. And I mean, it was night and day. And I mean, it way better, definitely way better. Not that it was bad, because I mean, you could make tons of money just waiting tables there when they first opened. And I mean, I don't doubt that you still can if you're a decent server. It's just that when they first opened, it was like the Wild West, but it was so cool. Uh,
yeah, dude, I
well,
remember that time. But yeah, that was like a
that
funny
was what
moment
I
in
liked
history.
best about going to Max's, because when we went to Max's
Max's
was the
was
Wild
awesome.
West
Max's was
until I quit. Like, well, rather no, it was the Wild West until they fired Oliver. Like, Max's
and before they shaved the fucking
right, well, they
menu down.
kept changing the menu, they cut the menu down ultimately was how they fixed it, and I'm gonna be honest, the changes they made obviously worked to a certain extent because the restaurant is still open and still produces quality food, uh, but, I mean, man, that was the thing that I loved about Max's was it was seriously like the Wild West of waiting tables because every day but Sunday, they fired someone, or yeah. Like, every day we went through that
Dude,
first calendar year that Max's was open. Do you know there were more than 300 employees?
was it
It
because
well, it
of
was
the
because
kitchen?
of the turnover, because they would fire every week. We had 2 different dishwashers.
Oh yeah, Liz was fucking
Right.
ruthless with fucking firing, and that's why we were like, "No, dude, we gotta get this side work done, or Liz is gonna
Right,
fucking
and I
fire
mean, it was
us."
they just would mow people down, like, and then if we had a bad shift where, like, the kitchen fell apart, fucking Ted would come in with, like, a fucking semi or fully automatic rifle of, like, just flags that pop out and say, "You're fired," and, like, that guy, honestly, he probably said, "You're fired" to more people than Donald Trump. Like, he just mowed people down.
Oh,
It was it
him.
honestly, it was kind of
Yeah.
incredible in my opinion, like, because he was a ruthless business owner. I worked for one of Ted's buddies, at Bistro, and the owner of Bistro, or I guess he's the owner, I don't know, GM, whatever, William, he told me that Ted used to come in there and tell him, he says, "William, you gotta fire someone every day." And I have no doubt that this after knowing what I know about Max's, I have no doubt that this was actually Ted's idea of how to be a good business owner is fire someone every day and everybody will keep working not to be fired. But I mean, even when
Yeah, and honestly, like, you're saying all of that, and I'm just wondering, how did I keep my
dude, I
job?
think about that all the
Just, like,
time.
work your ass off
Like,
every
I have
day.
no idea how I lasted there. Like, I worked there for over 2 years. Like, I think
Yeah, and I was
right,
like
I
a year and
think
a half
all the
before
time.
I left, and then they
Yeah,
let me
and they
come
let you
back.
come back, so you know you didn't get fired.
Yeah, and they let
Right.
me come back.
But, like,
Yeah.
they didn't pretend like you left and they were just like, "Well, that was the person we fired today." Like, no, like, I don't know, man, that place was something else, but you could make so much money there, it was like he was
It was fucking
he was doing
ridiculous. It was
something right,
amazing,
and now
like
apparently, last I checked in with them, Terrence West is doing fucking awesome. They're selling tons of food, and then, what was it? Little Saints is, like, now their 4th restaurant, and apparently yeah, and
oh, I
apparently
didn't even
Little
know they
Saint
opened that
crushes it
one.
too. Apparently that one's great, so even
Maybe they
well,
went
I
back
don't
to
know, I
firing
mean, rest
everybody,
in
dude.
peace, Ted, but whatever he left behind, I mean, they're love them or hate them, and I don't have any reason to love them, but goddamn, they know how to run a business.
Yeah, man. That was a good time, man. And see, this is the thing I mean by getting, like, nostalgic
Exactly, here
about
we go
serving, right?
again.
It's because like, there were times yeah, there were times there that were just so fucking awesome. Like, just like making all the money and like just getting off and getting fucking shit faced, having a great time with everybody, and then just like loading up, going back to work or going to work brunch hungover as hell the next day, like,
Dude,
and loving it. And and just like knowing that money was gonna be there, like
there were
knowing that you were gonna
the
get
fun
paid
my
at
time
the
at
end of the day.
Max's makes me think of 2 other restaurants. There used to be this Cuban place called Kentico, and Kentico had Mojito
Hmm.
Mondays. You could get any mojito on their menu. They had usually they were $7 or $8 mojitos, depending on what you got, but on Mondays, they were $2 or $3,
Hmm.
depending on what you got. And we would like I'd get off of work on Monday at 3 o'clock, and I'd sit at Kentico until they closed at 10 o'clock. I'd spend less than $20 and be so trashed. I had to leave my car and come back to get it the next day. Mind you, I was 19 years old. Then right, then the other place now
Hey.
Kentico's closed, so I can use their name and say that without fear of them getting in any trouble. The other place I will not name, but, it was definitely a gay bar, and it was definitely right around the corner from Max's, and that place, again, 19-year-old, pretty attractive, still have abs, Yeah, I didn't ever get ID'd going in there, but I would show up there with,
Hey.
it was, like, me and then, like, McKenna and, who was it? Like, McKenna, Hannah, there were tons of us, but it was mostly girls and me, and then, like, maybe a couple there might have been a couple dudes. I think Mike, you remember Mike with the kitchen guy with the long hair. Uh, yeah, and,
Yeah.
like, there were a
Yeah, I
few
remember
other
him.
kitchen guys from Terrence also that would show up, but, like, it was like a gay bar or service industry, and if you check the back patio, it was, like, all service industry from Max's and from Terrence, and, like, that place, we'd get trashed. It'd be 2 in the they'd have to be pushing us out the front door of the bar at 2 AM, and then we'd show up to work the next morning at 9 AM, no problem, just bounce back like rubber. It was crazy. I have no idea how I kept up that pace other than by virtue of being young.
Yeah, it's like now I drink like honestly I drank for the first time in like a month and a half, like a Friday. And we all had basically like a bottle of wine to each other. And then like I drank a bunch of water, you know, I was like safe to go home and you know, throughout the day and but I like woke up the next day and somehow even with all the water and the food that I ate and drank, I just woke up and I still felt like shit, dude. I still felt like shit. And like when I was younger, I would never take care of myself like that. I would just go, dive in, go
Right.
hard, go home, and then just like and then wake up and be like, oh, let me just go drink
Well,
coffee and eat donuts and be
yeah, like,
ready for the rest
now
of my
I'll
day.
drink, like, I think once every couple weeks, I'll drink, and then sometimes not even. It's if I go to see my parents or if Liz and I go to see her parents, then I'll have, like, a few drinks or I'll, like, drink over the weekend while we stay there. Other than that, I'm not drinking. I'm working out all the time. I go to the gym, like, twice a week. I go running, like, 3 or 4 times a week, and, I can't get the fucking weight off. Meanwhile, at that time, when I was, like, 18, 19, 20 years old, I had fucking abs, and I don't think I'd been inside of a gym since, like, I quit cross country when I was 17. Like, I have no idea. I didn't do anything to deserve the body that I had, and I hated it and took it for granted.
Oh, and I think that's any friggin' teenager. I mean, dude, there was a point where I was like 120 pounds and like living back home, you know, with family, your parents always have a full fridge, man. And also just like commuting too. Like commuting really has caused me to put on weight. I will say that. Like when you have a long drive, like you're gonna go for convenience, or alternatively, you're not gonna walk like 12 miles a fucking day, right? Like with serving, you're walking all day, like all day. And massage is very physical, but it's more
Right,
like
it's
lifting
cardio.
weights, right? Like resistance training. And I definitely yeah. So I have a lot of endurance, but when it comes to like cardio, no. So about actually 6 weeks ago, I also started paying a trainer online and I've been working out for the past like six
Dude,
weeks,
that's
and so I
awesome.
totally get that. It's like you can't be, yeah, man. But yeah, you can't be like fucked up and working out. It just doesn't really work like that
Yeah,
unless you're just
exactly,
really high.
you have to pick
You could
one.
probably work
What
out.
I definitely don't understand, if you watch, like I don't I guess you probably don't. There are, like, a couple shows on TV of, with, like, bodybuilders or, like, MMA fighters and shit like that, and, like, these guys are all in places like Colorado or fucking California, so, like, they're talking about smoking weed all the time on their show, and I'm just like, "Dude, like, how do you do that? How do you get high and then go to the gym?" Like, that sounds awful. That sounds terrible. In fact, that's like, I would make a game show out of, like, getting people stoned and then being like, "Okay, now you have to bench press 120 pounds," and, like, all the people just are just like, "Oh, no."
They're just like sitting on the fucking
Right, and,
ground, like
I
trying to
watch
watch
that's
Netflix or
part for
something. I
me,
don't
like, that's
know.
part of
Like,
why I have to, I mean, I went to NA and everything, like, I have to, like, keep myself busy and keep myself going, and I find the best way to motivate myself to, like, stay sober is just to work out and put, like, a lot of effort into taking care of my body, and, like, the uh, I just don't understand, like, how, like, people like, my old roommate was a amateur pro bodybuilder, and, like, he would, like he'd get stoned and go to the gym, and I would and his sense of wonderment is like, how do you do that? Like that just that doesn't
I
sound
mean,
fun
for
at
some
all.
people, yeah, I think for some people it heightens their state of body awareness, like, cause like, full disclosure, when I used to smoke, weed, there were a lot of times where my anxiety would spike really hard, which I know is funny, right? It's like people smoke weed to not get anxiety, but it would actually increase mine, and so I would just, like, make the decision to sit down and start doing like stretching and like some yoga, and I would just like really ground into my body. So like I can understand that to my extent, but I think if I went to the gym, I'd just be like, oh my god, everybody knows I'm high and about to lift these
I just
dumbbells.
feel like I
Like,
would be
so
I don't know, I feel like I'd be, like, too weak, like, I don't know, I mean, even though also this is coming from me, like, I would, like, smoke a cigarette and then be, like, physically completely worthless, it'd be like huff and puff carrying around, like, grocery bags
I don't
because of like, from just smoking a cigarette, so, like, obviously, when you're, like, smoking weed, there's, like, a higher volume of smoke, it's a lot denser, you cough a lot. And so maybe for me, it's just I associate all that smoke inhalation with, like, physical exhaustion. So but I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
God bless them, I guess, if they crack the code. But I will say,
yeah.
actually, just, what was it? What's his name? Not Bob Odenkirk. That's somebody no, that's somebody from Breaking Bad. Uh I can't remember the guy's
I'm
name,
terrible
but
with names,
point
but
is, big bodybuilder guy, he, like, got it weed taken off the substances that they drug test for in the Professional Bodybuilding and Powerlifting Association, but he did it because, apparently, I had no idea, painkillers were, like, a huge problem for these guys, like, a lot of these guys, they're tearing their body to shreds, like, every day, so a bunch of these dudes are taking painkillers so they can work out harder.
yeah,
So his whole thing yeah, his whole thing was like, "Dude,
Jesus.
weed is legal in a lot of places to stop opioid addiction. Why not just make the weed legal so people can use the weed to manage their pain so that way they don't get addicted to painkillers?" Which, in my opinion, saying, "What if we just let them get addicted to weed?" is a pretty piss poor argument for legalization, but, I mean, I will say it's as far as the lesser of 2 evils go yeah, as far
It
as the
worked.
lesser of 2
It
evils go, I
fucking
will
worked.
say that shit did work, so God bless him. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I've read some studies and it can assist with muscle fatigue. So,
I
I mean, that
suppose.
makes sense to a degree. But I mean, I think working out like that anyway. I mean, as someone who's seen bodies like that, it's just fucking detrimental, dude. I mean, you lose your range of motion. You lose whatever you think you're gaining from that, and then like 10 years later you have serious shoulder problems because you couldn't get full range of motion in your fucking shoulder, and now you might have to get surgery, or like, I don't know. Those people tend to be very prone to injury. People who love overdoing it, and I mean, overdoing it and overworking out can also be another thing that you can get like addicted to. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm so ready to be this beef and this diesel. Just being a really big person. People love being big, but there are a lot of things you
Yeah,
can
that's
trade up for
true.
that, and
The
getting
thing
shredded like that.
like I said, I
So,
work out, like, a lot. I don't wanna be like a giant beefcake. I don't wanna be able to lift like a Mazda Miata. I wanna be able to run and climb like I used to be able to. Like, I remember seeing James fucking that dude would
yeah.
scale up the outside of a freaking fire escape, like, no problem, and I'm
Yep.
like I told you, like, the first time he tries to do that shit again, he's gonna break out in tears, like, he's gonna be like he's it's I wish that I could move like I used to. I remember seeing him do that, and that was at the point where we weren't going to Belle Isle all the time anymore, so I was just starting to lose it, and I remember how
Yeah.
jealous I was seeing him, like, do these crazy cat stunts that, like, I was like, "Man, like, I used to be able to do that," or like, "Oh, man, I was working to be able to do that, and then I gave up." I don't even know what happened other than just I was a big baby, and I got broken up with, and I cried too much. Like, I don't know.
I mean, a lot of shit happened. I mean, a lot of shit happened to you. I mean, a lot of shit happened to you, and it kind
It
of
did change
disrupted the
some
flow of
things.
life, man. I mean, you know, I Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is like that, and the danger of nostalgia or whatever is like change. We forget to acknowledge like the change that put us in this new like position, right? So it's just I really miss going to the river in general. I mean, shit, dude. I try to go to the river when I can, but I love going there still. Like when I go to Richmond
You know,
and I have some time, I'm always hitting people up. I'm like, hey, are you free to go to the river? And they're like, no, I'm an
yeah,
adult.
I
I don't
definitely
have
know what
time.
you
And I'm
mean.
like,
Like
damn it.
when I was
So
still living in Richmond, I think the
yeah.
last time I went to the river, I just remember thinking it was totally different and it sucks now, like, because, like, oh, there's so many people hanging out in the rock quarry. Like, there were people with, like, beach towels and coolers all over the rock quarry, and, all I could think about was, like, the quote unquote "good old days" when we had it all to ourselves, when, like, the reality is it was probably just as crowded or maybe just slightly less crowded, and we just didn't notice because I was there with friends doing friend stuff, not just there by myself trying to, like, setting myself up for disappointment, trying to relive a memory that you can never really go back to.
Yeah, right? It's interesting how that all computes.
Yeah, no,
Speaking of, we should go to the river
honestly, man,
sometime
like, we're running
if
out of
you wanna go,
summertime,
man.
and that's way closer than Virginia Beach, so I would absolutely be down to go to the river and, bring fuck it, we could even swing by West Point, pick up Stella, we can all go down. Yeah, and
Oh!
I'm glad that this came up, talking about trying to relive memories you can never get back again. But actually, I I talked to another member
So
of the
depressing.
Goontang clan recently, and I'm hoping to have Mr. Buddy on
Oh,
the
yeah?
show here sometime pretty soon to talk about his, I
Oh,
don't know,
shit,
talk
dude.
about his life adventures. He's been doing some stand-up recently, which is something he's talked about.
Yeah, I
And
finally checked out his Instagram after you told me. I didn't catch
he
the whole
has the
set,
whole
but I was
set,
like,
I think
"Damn,
it's just
buddy,
5
go
minutes,
ahead,
and it's
man."
an open mic set, and God bless him for leaving that up. Uh, I mean, the material the material has so much potential. I absolutely
Oh,
believe
shit,
in
dude.
the potential of his material, but it's the same thing everybody says about the first time they do stand-up. You pretty much just watch them eat their own dick, which, by the way, I'll be joining that club here pretty soon. I've got my 5 minutes all set up, and we got an open mic coming up here, I think, in like a week, so I should be doing that. No, are you
Ew.
crazy? I know
Are you
way too
doing
many
that in
people in
Richmond,
Richmond.
or
No, no, I'm doing that in Harrisonburg, where the only people who know me is, the girl that I date and live with and, her dad. So they'll no doubt they'll both be there to watch me do a mediocre job. Her dad can remind me that Steve Martin does do an online, uh, master class for stand-up comedy. And then, I'll just say, "Hey, dude, that's not something I can spend money on right now, so I'll just keep sucking at this until I'm good at it." But, yeah, right. Uh,
that's what she said.
Jesus. Uh, but yeah, so I'm hoping to get Buddy on the show here soon. We talked
Gotcha.
about it. He's busy with some work-related projects, starting a new job. So, but yeah, once he's settled things in, hopefully in the next week or so, I can get him on the show.
Yeah, dude, that'll be awesome. It'll be great I mean, I haven't personally talked to him in a very long time, but, I'm glad to hear that
He's
he's,
hey, he's doing
doing
he's
well
doing
and
his
trying.
thing, and I
So,
guess, if you haven't caught up with him yourself, then, I'll encourage him to reach out, but he suffers from the same thing I do where, keeping up with people, it is a skill, and people don't realize that. Keeping up with your friends is a skill, and not everyone has it.
yeah, and I mean, also just taking the time for it. I mean, again, going back to things, and, just life changes, man. I mean, shifts happen, and, this was kinda gonna dive into another point, I was thinking about before we even started talking, but just, like, social media and how we stay like connected to people through social media even if we're not engaging with them in real life, right? And there are points where like social media can be used for like obviously like good things or like to check up on people, but in general it's kind of like hanging on to the threads of people we don't actually see anymore, don't actually talk to anymore. um So, and I think that's a weird thing that social media does for us is like, we become observers in other people's lives that we may have participated in that we can no longer participate in. Or observers in people's lives that we don't even fucking know. It's
Yeah,
just like we
that's
follow people that
definitely
inspire us
that
or
there's
what have you.
definitely something to
So,
be said about that
yeah,
as far as, like, social especially as far as social media goes, only I would actually probably be more encouraged to keep up with people that I always say, "Oh, I wish I did a better job of picking up the phone and dialing it to talk to this person." But, we'd probably all of our relationships would probably be a little bit more meaningful without it, because you don't get this window where you can just look through somebody's photo albums
yeah,
and say, "Oh, yeah, so and so got engaged. Oh, look at that. It's the she said yes picture of the guy that I went to preschool my best friend from preschool just got
yeah,
engaged. That's beautiful." You know, I yeah, and, like,
yeah,
that's great
yeah.
that you can do that. You can look and just see, like, "Oh, wow, they're doing really awesome. I'm so happy to hear that." But on the flip side, if you didn't have social media, you'd have to call that person and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And be Man, I was just thinking about old times, just wanted to catch up and say hi." And they'd be like, "Well, shit, man, you remember that girl I dated in high school? It's been 7 years. We're finally engaged. Wow, dude." Like, it's just crazy. It's a crazy, crazy world, crazy time we live in. And it's only getting crazier. It's not gonna make more sense the more of this technology they develop.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you say all of that because I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. I don't remember who, but we were talking about like I was like, I wonder if you could do a psychological study of like how often people engage with each other who are not involved in social media versus people who are, right? Because like that's just it. I mean, I feel like it was actually when I hung out with Ashley over the weekend. We were talking about this, and um, it's just like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. So you call somebody, you check up on them, you see how they're doing, versus like, oh shit, that person just posted like a funny meme. Let my comment interaction be like the furthest interaction I have with them today, or something like that. But I was just, I just found that interesting, and it's also like there's some people that I have no desire to be connected to whatsoever. I mean, like I have a lot of friend requests that I haven't accepted because it's like I haven't talked to you in like 15 years. We were never really friends anyway. Why are you sending me a friend request? Um, just to like creep on my life, like, and I just I mean, I love social media. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and like knock it and say I don't enjoy using it. I love a lot of the functionality of it. I personally try to use it for entrepreneurial groups, and also like my personal trainer has a support group on there, so all of the people in the program can like talk to each other and interact. And that's really cool, right? Because I'm connected with people I would never otherwise be connected with in a positive way. But when it comes to some of the really interpersonal relationships that I have, um, with people that I really care about, but I haven't been able to see for a while, it's like, this is the most of your life you're going to allow me to see through the like filtration of your social media. And then like, am I actually going to interact with you, or am I just going to see that you're active on your thing and go about my day kind of thing? So,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's a whole nother demon.
well, I mean, I was gonna say just to give a little bit of credit as far as the social media sphere goes. One of my best friends now, as far as people from high school I still keep up with, other than I mean, I guess other than you, of course. But no, it was a guy that was he was in my class, and like we knew each other and we like hung out a few times in a group setting when we were in school. I guess we were in a couple clubs or sports together, but the first time he and I like hung out like one on one was only like a week or two before we graduated. And
Mm,
now probably once or twice a year, I make damn certain, like, I hang out with this dude. We, like, like, he'll come down for the weekend, we'll kick it. We'll, we'll go to a bar or a club and, have one wild, crazy night, because like, he doesn't get wild or crazy. I don't really get wild or crazy anymore. But, but then, like, when I see him, like, we just end up, like, not and definitely not, like, reckless shit, but just like, "Hey, like, you're down here. We got, what a great excuse to, like, we're only hanging out for a couple days. Let's get as little sleep as possible until you have to go. Uh,
Fuck yeah, dude.
yeah, and I mean, and that's somebody that I keep up with best. Like I said, we hung out. He and I hung out like only within the last couple weeks of school, and then I went off to college, didn't work out. I came back, uh, and then he like hit me up. He's like, "Oh, hey, so like you're home from school?" I'm like, "Yeah, it didn't work out for me." He's like, "Hey, no shame, man. Like, that's awesome though, because when I'm back in town, I'll know to hit you up to hang out." And I mean, granted, by the time he came down, I was living in Richmond, but that was when he was like, "You know what? Fuck it. Like, I'll come up to Richmond to see you." And I was like, I hate this. I almost hope he's not listening because I don't want to hurt his feelings. But like at that point, I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't realize we were like friends." Like, that's awesome. I made a friend. I had no
Yeah,
idea. Because
yeah,
also growing up in West Point, you don't have the opportunity to make a lot of friends. You just already know everyone. So like,
yeah,
right. So
exactly.
realizing that I had actually made a friend in that last couple weeks, and then he came up to Richmond. We hung out. It was awesome. And then 6 months, a year later, he came back to Richmond again, and yeah, we just made a point to keep hanging out. And over the years, this is somebody I like text and talk to frequently. We'll send each other like dumbass messages on Snapchat like while we're at work. But yeah, I mean, it's somebody I really enjoy keeping up with. That if it weren't for the accessibility of social media, I don't know that I would have done as great of a job, or him for that matter.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like I said, I love social media. I fucking use it all the time. I have like two accounts for my one for my art, one for me as a business owner. And then I love all the memes. I mean, God, I love memes. That shit just makes my day sometimes, you know? And I mean, it's because of the internet and the connectivity, right? Because we grew up when like AIM and the internet was still like really forming itself, right? So there's some people that I really love talking to and engaging with on social media, and I love sharing like funny, stupid shit that I find like in the click of a mouse or in the click of a button. So there are definitely some good things, but also there's like people I will have been on friends with on Facebook for a long time, and we don't ever talk, we don't ever interact. That's it. It's just like So and like I said, I'm not trying to like totally knock it, but it's just a thought that I had the other day when I was talking to
Yeah.
Ashley. Um, yeah,
Well,
man.
Courtney, I'm gonna be
Um,
honest, man. We just did an hour and a half. We talked about starting
hey.
your own business. We talked about porn. We talked about jealousy. We talked about porn and jealousy again. I mean, I think we covered it. But but yeah, man.
Yeah, dude, no sweat.
This was a ton of fun. We definitely got to get you on the show again sometime because honestly, I could keep this going for another hour and a half, but I'm pretty sure everybody's gonna stop listening after 10 minutes like they always do.
Hey, man. I mean, I've done my best to listen. I love what you're doing, man. I mean, even if I don't get the time to sit down and
Oh,
take it
that
all in,
wasn't that
but
wasn't
I
directed
did
at
like the
you.
ice
Don't
cream
out
joke that.
yourself.
Oh,
uh,
out. It's always sunny themes. I out
yeah,
myself.
there we go.
Boom. Uh, but yeah, dude. Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it too. I'm gonna work out after this, and I'd love to be back on your show and keep shooting the shit, man. It was a good
Absolutely,
time.
absolutely. So for all of our listeners, as always, thanks for listening. And here's some more music by Keenan Rayner. In fact, I think we're gonna do one of my favorites again. You all know this tune. It's called "Be Kind."